I slept at my friend's house and we weren't allowed to leave the bedroom after 9 p.m. I soon found out why. We had been friends for 13 years, and in those years I had not once slept at his house. So, why the sudden invite? I asked. I settled the duffel on my shoulder and he held the door. My parents are going out, he said, and the words came out of him in a rush. Figured it's about time you saw my humble abode. The house was not a humble abode. It was a great white clapboard house that stood on the land as if it had been there forever and the town had grown around it. Old oaks stood guard over the grounds and their shadows fell across the yard. Inside the house there was a smell of old wood and polish and something more besides, a smell like turned earth after a rain. His mother was a woman built of small bones, and she carried a frantic smile that did not touch her eyes. She moved about the dim rooms with a nervous energy, asking of drinks and of snacks. His father sat in a leather chair and he did not speak. He was a large man whose eyes were dark and still, and they followed us as we passed. At 7 o'clock they left. I heard his mother's whispered words to Leo, urgent and low, but I could not make them out. So, what's the plan? I asked. I dropped my bag on the floor of his room. The room was a small island of the ordinary in that house, with its posters and its rumpled bed and the console set before the television. It was the only place that did not feel as if it belonged to the dead. Pizza, video games, the usual, Leo said. He knelt and woke the machine. He moved with a forced calm, but I saw the cording in his neck. We ate the pizza and played the games, and for a time I did not think of the house or of the silence that lay coiled in its other rooms. For a time it was only the two of us and the sounds from the screen. Then near to 9 he paused the game. "Hey man," he said. He would not look at me but worked the controller in his hands. "There's just one weird rule my parents have." "Weird rule?" "Yeah." He raised his head and his eyes were serious as a stone. "After 9 p.m. we have to be in here, in the bedroom, and we can't leave. Not for anything. Not for the bathroom, not for a drink, nothing. The door stays closed until sunrise." I stared at his face and looked for the jest that was not there. "You're kidding, right? What if I have to pee?" "Pee now," he said. His voice was flat. He gestured with his chin to an empty bottle on his desk. "And after 9, you use that." The laugh I had in my throat died there. "Dude, that's insane." "Why?" He shrugged his shoulders, but the motion was counterfeit. "They're just super weird about security. Old house, you know? They think it's drafty." Drafty. I knew he was lying, I just didn't know why. Downstairs a clock began to chime the hour and his head snapped toward the door. Bong, bong, bong. He was on his feet before the 9th bell had sounded its note. He crossed the room and closed the door. He slid a heavy bolt of steel into its housing and the sound it made was final. "There," he said. A sweat had bloomed on his brow and he breathed out the word. "We're good." "Leo, what the hell is going on?" I demanded. "Nothing, man. Just a weird rule," he said. He would not look at the door. He turned up the sound of the game until it was a roar in that small room. But I did not see the game. I saw only the bolted door and I felt a coldness take root in my gut. The house was quiet again. But it was not the same quiet. This was a listening quiet, a waiting quiet, and in the dark heart of that house something waited, and we were locked in that room and waiting with it. An hour passed and there was no sound from the house. The fear went out of Leo slowly and he played the game with a feigned calm that did not sit right on him. We played on in that silence and a vexation grew in me at the foolishness of it all. "You really need to tell your parents this is a certifiable way to raise a serial killer," I said. He gave back a fake smile. "Tell me about it." Then came a sound from the rooms below. It was a soft and measured thumping on the boards of the main hall. "What's that?" I whispered. Leo played on. He stared at the screen and his fingers worked the buttons as if he did not hear. "It's nothing. House settling." "That's not the house settling, Leo." The sound ceased. In the quiet, I could hear the blood in my own ears. Then there came a new sound which was a dragging sound, a scraping of some great weight across the wood floor beneath us as of a heavy thing with broken feet. I muted the television. "Okay, that's definitely not the house," I said. Leo set the controller down upon the carpet. His face was pale in the shifting light of the screen. "Just ignore it, Liam. Please. It goes away if you ignore it." "What? What is it? What goes away?" Before he could answer, it spoke. The voice came from the hallway, faint at first, on the other side of our door. "Leo? Honey." I did not move. The voice was his mother's voice. "Leo, sweetheart, your father and I came home early. I brought you boys some warm cookies. Open the door." I looked to Leo and saw a boy cast in tallow. He stared at the door as if it were the gate of hell itself, and he raised a trembling finger to his lips and shook his head. "Leo, that's your mom," I whispered. "Don't be silly, sweetie. We're inside," the voice said. It was just outside the door now. "I just baked your favorites. Chocolate chip. They're getting cold." The scraping from below had stopped. There was only the sweet persuasion of that voice in the silent house. But the voice was wrong. There was a terrible perfection in its sound, like a memory of a voice and not the voice itself. Then came the knocking. It was a soft and wet sound on the far side of the door, as if a piece of meat were striking the wood. "Leo? Liam? Are you boys all right in there? You're being awfully quiet." "Leo," I mouthed, but no sound came. He sat upon the floor like a man made of stone, his eyes wide with a plea that had no words. He looked like something trapped. The knob of the door turned, once to the left and once to the right. Then it began to rattle in its fitting with a growing violence. "Boys, this isn't funny," the voice said. The sweetness broke in it then, and it was replaced with a hard and ragged edge. "Open the door." A great blow struck the door and the frame of it groaned in the wall. I scrambled away from it on my hands and feet until my back was against the far wall of the room. The voice changed. It spoke again, and the voice was a ruin, a low and guttural thing that gurgled in its throat. "IKNOWYOUREINTHERE." The wet tapping began again, faster now and frantic. With it came a thin and keening whine, a sound like wind through a crack in the world. And from the dark gap beneath the door a black and viscous fluid began to seep into the room. It was thick as oil, and it carried the smell of the grave, of wet soil and of things that rot in the earth. Leo moved. He crawled to the bed and pulled the blankets over him and became a small and shuddering shape in the dim room. He had gone into his own darkness. On the other side of the door the thing fell silent. I knew it was not gone. I knew that in my bones. It was there in the darkness beyond the door, and it was waiting. I kept my back to the far wall and I watched the door. My breath was a small and panicked thing in my throat. On the bed Leo was a trembling knot of blankets and fear. For me this was a night's journey into that darkness. For him it was the place he lived. A fool's curiosity which has been my ruin more than once warred with the terror. A need to see the shape of the thing that hunted us. A dreadful truth was better than not knowing. I went forward on my stockinged feet and the old boards did not whisper. "Liam, no," came a voice from the bed, muffled by the cloth. Don't look." But I would look. I knelt upon the floor and the reek of the grave was stronger. I lowered my head to the cold brass of the keyhole. At first there was only the dim hall and the moonlight that fell in a pale blade from the window at its end. Then it stepped into the narrow view. It was not a man nor was it a beast. It was a thing that was built of sticks and of shadow, impossibly tall and thin. Its limbs were the limbs of a winter tree and its body was a gyre of dust and night that had no true form. It wore his mother's floral apron. The cloth stretched over a hollow space where a chest should be. It wore his father's hunting cap set upon a head that was only a clot of moving dark. It had no face, only a void. In one of its twig-like hands it held a picture I had seen on the wall, a portrait of the family. It held this picture before the void where its face should be, and it wore the smile of Leo's mother for its own. From its body it put forth a long and blackened twig of an arm, and it tapped upon the door. Thump, thump, thump. I threw myself back from the door and clapped a hand to my mouth to keep the gorge from rising. My mind could not hold the shape of what I had seen. This was no creature that had entered the house. This was the house itself, a parasite that wore the stolen keepsakes of the dead or the soon-to-be-dead for its raiment. From the door a new voice whispered, and the blood in me went to ice. "Liam? Why are you hiding in there? Your mother is so worried about you." It was my own mother's voice, perfect. The voice she used when I was a child and sick with fever, the call to supper from a life I would not see again. A wave of homesickness and of horror washed over me, for I wanted to be home and I was not. And the thing in the hall gave a low chuckle that was the sound of dry leaves scuttling on a stone walk. It knew it had found the part of me that was soft. "Let me in, Liam," my mother's voice whispered, a sound of love and of poison. "I've come to take you home."